All right, I call to order our IVDA meeting for this afternoon on September the 11th. We'll do a roll call in a little bit, but we'll go ahead and start off with, I have a number of speaker slips, and if anybody else wants to speak, feel free to fill one out while I'm going and having the rest of the speakers come in. So it sounds like most of the speakers from what I'm looking at are for closed session items. So we'll go ahead and let you speak. So I'm just going to go ahead and announce your name in the order that I received. So we'll start off with the first person, Jody Bisberg? Eisenberg, sorry.
Good afternoon. I'm here as a member of the San Bernardino community. I live in this community, and as you know, we have presented you this afternoon, you should all have it on your dais there, the State of Alliance California report by the San Bernardino Airport communities. And what we are asking for is your help. Our community needs your help with this project. This Hillwood base reuse plan should have been held to a higher standard given the amount of money that they're going to make on this plan and the lack of any contribution so far to our community. Our community needs your help. You can see by looking at our air that the pollution that we at one time had under control, or a little bit under control, has vastly deteriorated. We have more pollution now than in some of the major areas of the basin, including Los Angeles. We had something in the neighborhood of 86 days of bad air so far this year. We know that this community has not had an opportunity to have an input on what will happen to us when this project is completed. We know that the investors are going to make a lot of money on this, but our city needs real jobs. The jobs that you claimed that this project claims to have replaced, the 14,000 or so in excess, those are not jobs that pay a living wage. They're part-time jobs. Most of the people are employed through part-time employment agencies. They have no benefits. In fact, most of the workers at the warehouses have part-time schedules that they don't know about until a day or two before they're scheduled to work. We cannot rebuild our community with jobs like those. We need living wages that pay the people in this community a wage that will allow them to rent a home or to live in a home and to buy food and support their kids. The IVDA could have set standards on air quality mitigation, but that hasn't happened. We need air quality mitigation, we need good jobs, and today you will hear from other people who will address some of the issues here and who are also experiencing the consequences of what's happening in our community, the bad roads that are the result of the trucks going over our roads, diesel trucks emitting more pollution in the air than is normal in this area, and you know it's bad to begin with, and lousy, lousy jobs. If any of you have been to any of the warehouse facilities, you know they won't support a community. We need your help. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Court Smith.
Hi, my name is Court Smith, and I am here on behalf of the members of 350 Riverside and Sunrise Inland Empire as part of the San Bernardino Airport Community Coalition. And we are here to say that well, we are here to try to hold Hillwood accountable for the environmental impacts of their projects and of the upcoming Eastgate Airport expansion. We know that Hillwood Properties, they've done the bare minimum so far in assuring community members that they will be protected from exposure to pollutants caused by the operation of their 26 facilities. Whereas other regions across Southern California have improved their air, in particular Los Angeles County, the Inland Empire's air quality has diminished in the last 20 years. We know that the environmental impact reports are missing for these projects. As community members who have to live in and breathe this air, we deserve to know how our environment is going to be impacted. We need to know that our community will be protected from the impacts of Hillwood's expansions here. In 2002, the Inland Valley Development Agency entered into a master developer and disposition agreement with Texas-based Hillwood Investment Properties for the redevelopment of the Norton Air Force Base, which officially closed in 1994. The terms of this agreement were extremely profitable for Hillwood. In exchange for paying to install landscaping and signage around the base, build a 400,000 square foot building and pay some of the San Bernardino Airport and IVDA's debts and operating expenses, the IVDA gave Hillwood the right to sell or lease the county-owned property on the former base and keep the vast majority of the proceeds for itself and its investors. Rather than make Hillwood's base reuse plans be subject to even higher standards than those that govern typical redevelopment efforts, significant amounts of public funds were given up for Hillwood's benefit. Hillwood received 25% of the revenue on existing buildings it leased out, 85% of the income on new buildings it leased out, and 80% of the revenue from the sale of land or buildings on the former base. To date, at least 22 properties have been sold to private owners in the redevelopment area, including 17 properties that were not purchased, including 17 properties that were purchased by Hillwood-controlled companies. The sale prices for the transactions were not disclosed, but according to the earliest available assessment records, the properties had a total value of $512 million. Under the terms of the MDDA, Hillwood would have taken in around $484 million in proceeds from the sale of those properties. The 10 properties that are currently owned by Hillwood Control Companies are currently worth a combined $279.5 million.
And your time is up. Thank you very much. Thank you. Next on the list is Nadia Solis.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Nadia. I'm a resident of San Bernardino. So learning a little bit about Inland Valley Development Agency, I read about the purpose. And the purpose is to provide comprehensive military base reuse and development of safe and sustainable public airport. And 2 is community and economic revitalization. So there's a few things that stand out to me about that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like this agency prioritizes safety, sustainability, community, and economy revitalization. Part of that process would include actively exploring a variety of perspectives and implementing the solutions that emphasizes those key points. I don't want to sound repetitive, and I know it's been said time and time again, and I'm not interested in wasting your time. But from my own research, it's pretty obvious that by pumping more low-income jobs with an increase of diesel fuel into this area is pretty much the exact opposite of what the purpose is. So, you can't achieve safety when research shows that the link between cancer and respiratory illness with diesel emissions. That's just a fact. There's plenty of research to support that. And you can't achieve sustainability if you weaken the health of the community because you weaken the workforce. That's just common sense. And you can't achieve community and economic revitalization if you ignore these concerns that have been brought up again and again and pump more low-wage jobs. A living wage job in the Inland Empire is when 2 individuals make $18 per hour for a household of 4 people. That means for one person to take care of a whole household of 4 people would be $36 per hour. That's just to get by with rent, transportation, childcare. And I'm not sure if that's what's going to be offered to the workforce in this project. I'm not sure. And I'm not sure about a lot of things because this project hasn't been transparent with the plans and their intentions. There's been plenty of times where we've brought up our concerns and nothing has really been seen from it. And I have to ask, are these meetings meant to listen to our feedback and do something meaningful with it, or is it just to check a box?
Thank you. Next on my list is Andres Garcia.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Andres. I'm a resident of San Bernardino. I was born and raised right up the street. My thing, as of late, is gardens. Green spaces, spaces that can combat some of the issues that we're facing, specifically in the city of San Bernardino. The reason why I chose community gardens and green spaces is because its impact is so intersectional, meaning it serves underserved communities, communities that are typically low income, affected by environmental pollution, and just overall blight. So that's why I'm here today, is just to discuss also how intersectional the impact of Eastgate can be. I want to make clear that I'm not against the creation of jobs. But I used to work at Amazon, and I used to work in the pick department. And I don't know if you're familiar with the pick department, but you're basically a personal shopper, and you're walking through aisles and aisles and aisles with rows and rows and rows of shelves of different items that somebody in the country or in the area had bought up, and you're picking and putting them in a basket. I worked there for maybe about 6 months. And the first thing that I realized when I worked there is I actually didn't work for Amazon. I worked for SMX Management. So that's one thing that was a barrier to me when I first started working at Amazon was, I'm not really working here. I'm working for a staffing agency, and they can get rid of me anytime. So that's just an example of the type of jobs that are going to be offered from the companies that are filling up these places that Hillwood is propping up. And these buildings go up real quick. I watched what happened to Tippecanoe, and before you spend some time away from home, and then you come back, and then there's 5 or 6 warehouses in one place. There's 40, 50 trucks a day coming in and out of that warehouse, and they're all driving by neighborhoods, parking in neighborhoods. And now this issue is going to be exacerbated with the addition of planes. And again, I'm not against job creation. I'm not against logistics. But this is an issue that's affecting San Bernardino in such a way that, like I said, it's intersectional. It's creating issues for people, even mentally. People are committing suicide at work. So this is something that I'd like you all to keep in mind when you're considering this Eastgate project and considering the reach that Hillwood has on the city of San Bernardino. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the list is Ben Reynoso.
How's it going?
Good.
Just kind of wanted to echo what the two previous speakers, three, have spoken on regarding Eastgate, is that we know the reality of the development in this area. We know, as Nadia mentioned, one of the main purposes is repurposing of Norton Air Force Base. We know we lost the jobs. Like Jody said, 14,000 jobs that are equating to what Andres said about temporary employment. You're fueling the narrative that you're trying to counteract. It's not true. What's happening here doesn't seem like it's truthful, transparent, which is also why we put in a public records request around all Hillwood developments, because the environmental impact statement that wasn't even done properly around Eastgate, how can we expect that it's been done correctly around all the numerous, we see the stars, there's stars everywhere, it's Hillwood. People are starting to put two and two together, and people have concerns, legitimate concerns. They want to know exactly what the impacts are, and they want them to be transparent, and they want you to be a vocal advocate almost. You don't have to be vocal, but be a real advocate for the community in which you choose to develop upon. So the way that we can tangibly do this is for promoting and ensuring that Hillwood enters into an agreement with the community for a community benefits agreement. Without such agreements, how can you expect to be reelected? How can you expect to be somebody who can stand here or sit here and represent the community? The facts are the facts. We know that the jobs aren't what they're promised to be. We know that diesel is what is responsible for the gray sky. I was riding over here today, still can't see the south side from the north side. As you go into the south side, you can't see the north side anymore. Coincidence? I think not. I think Hillwood. That's what I think now. And more tangibly and more explicitly poignant, I think Eastgate. You have an opportunity on your hands. Let's get this community benefits agreement across, and let's be real about it. Let's be honest with each other and the community in which you represent. So CBA or bust. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the list is Mario Salcedo.
Good afternoon. My name is Mario Saucedo. I'm the past president of the local Teamsters 1932. I'm also a past Housing Authority commissioner, and I'm also a current planning commissioner for the city of Redlands. But where I'm most, where I feel where I have the strongest advocacy, and you see it's for those that may not have a voice or that are working and not able to come to these meetings. And so I am trying to lend a voice to those that aren't here today for the impact that Hillwood will have to this community. And it's about the people that I've been representing and have been trying to be an advocate for these many long years. And I think it's important that your project has a responsibility, as many of us do, to the people that we serve or that we have impact. So what is the responsibility that we have on people's health, education, where they live? I think it's important that you, as an organization, understand that there needs to be mitigated impacts to the community, and there needs to be, as the previous speaker stated, a community benefit agreement, that there needs to be investment into the local community so that it does able to sustain itself, because there's going to be long-term effects with the health. And of course, it's all about, the cycle of education, health, living. And so I encourage you to make sure that you take that into account when you're making your decisions, is what is your responsibility to the people that you're going to be impacting with this development as it concerns the people's health and their environment and their livability. So I encourage you to make sure that you do everything you can to protect those that you're going to be impacting.
Thank you. And the last speaker on my list is Alicia.
Good afternoon. It's so nice to see you all. Thank you for being here. My name is Alicia Enciso. My family has been here in the Inland Empire in San Bernardino since the early 40s. Very involved with the community throughout. I've been in and out, going to school in Los Angeles and running my business there. And I've been home for about 10 years now. And what I see is there's no doubt there's need for jobs, but I think these kind of jobs and this kind of development, we don't need any more of. I think for 19 years, this organization, the developer for this area, has had an opportunity to be a good corporate citizen to the citizens of San Bernardino, to really negotiate with our city council, with the county on what are they going to do about the roads and the streets, and also how this area is getting more polluted. Personally, I've noticed how my family is impacted by the lack of quality of air. And now we're going to have airplanes and more diesel trucks, 500 diesel trucks a day. And I think that to our young council people, you're new at this, but the people that were here before you didn't care enough. They just wanted jobs. We can't afford to just have jobs that are killing our residents. Coming back home, I see my dear friend of mine's mom just died from lung cancer. Many of the people in my neighborhood have died from different types of respiratory problems, including my family. So, and the increase of cancer and asthma in the children. I watch my nieces and nephews be connected to respirators so that they can get some good air quality. You've got to look at that. Every single day it's been unhealthy air quality. I think we had a few hours on Sunday where it was good. The owner of Amazon lives in Seattle, and there it's usually very good air quality. He doesn't give a hoot of what you and your friends and the residents of this area are breathing. You need to look at that seriously. You haven't done anything to repair the roads, to create forests so that we, can absorb some of that bad air quality. There hasn't been an overall holistic design on how, if we're going to allow a corporation like that to continue to pollute our neighborhood and our cities, and it's not just San Bernardino, it's the San Manuel Indio Reservation, it's Arrowhead, it's East Highland, it's Redlands, it's Rialto, etc. And these young people here, you must have kids or grandkids or nephews. Don't you care? As I grew up, Del Rosa, I noticed all the kids there running. How can we allow them to run in this kind of air quality? Please think about it. It is upon you, the new leadership, to do something about it and think about the future of our children and our seniors and the people of San Bernardino and the Inland Empire. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All righty, thank you very much. We'll go ahead and recess to closed session, and then we'll come back and do the regular IVDA meeting, used to council meetings. Thank you. When we have public comments, there is no responses back. Unless it's an item that's on the agenda for us to discuss, we're not at liberty to discuss back. So I know that it doesn't sound like many of you were informed about how the process works, but so just so you know. We're not being rude, we're following the rules. Is there any reportable action, Mr. Attorney?
No, there is no reportable actions. I would, however, like to note in view of our various public comments that none of the posted items on our closed session agenda had any matter that involved Hillwoods. So there was no discussion relevant to Hillwood in our closed
Thank you
session.
for clarifying that. Let's go ahead and do roll call at this time.
Please state your name for the record. Member from the City of Colton.
Frank Navarro.
Isaac Suchel.
Thank you. Members from the City of Loma Linda.
Dusty Rigsby.
And Ovi Popescu.
Thank you. And members from the City of San Bernardino.
Bessine Richard.
Theodore Sanchez.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and start with our Pledge of Allegiance, and I'll ask Mr. Theodore Sanchez to lead us in that, please.
All rise. Right hand over your heart. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Are there any items to be added or deleted?
No item, sir.
Mr.
Okay.
Chair?
Yes.
If I may, please? I would ask us to please stand in a moment of silence for the 9/11 victims at the Twin Towers, at the Pentagon, and in Pennsylvania. Thank you.
I agree. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your indulgence.
Are there any conflict of interest disclosures? And if you have, just let me know as we get to the item. And then we'll move on to informational items, and we'll start off in the orders they're listed. Mr. Burrows, item number A.
So a brief update on Mountain View. Some utility work is ramping up right now on the crossing at Mission Creek, but it did not necessitate a road closure as of yet. So that was good, particularly around the Labor Day holiday. The SBCTA crews that are doing the rail crossing work had some materials that had to be cleaned up before our crews could get in. So that coordination is underway, and we think they'll be able to get on the ground with SoCal Gas here in the next week or so. The highway interchange work at I-10 and Mountain View is well underway, and you see in my weekly updates the staging of that. And the good folks at the City of Loma Linda have a great handle on all of that going on over there. So that concludes that report. On item C, September is always the time for our annual filing for updated documents with the U.S. Department of Commerce, so we can continue to apply for and hopefully receive grant funding. And Ms. Beltran, our project manager, just put the finishing touches on the last draft with input from our JPA members and your staff, so thank you on that. And that is on track to be filed at the end of the month as expected with federal EDA. So thanks for your teams on those. Item D, I want to spend a minute on with a bit of a picture up there. The Norton Air Force Base environmental cleanup process is something that I haven't riddled you with too much because the substantial effort has been dealt with already. But we are nearing another milestone here after all these years. And that's something that is to be pointed out because it involves a number of agencies, regulatory, but also federal, state, and local. And the Air Force crews advised us in our base closure team meeting a few weeks back that we are in a position here at this point going into next year to potentially start the process to delist Norton Air Force Base as a Superfund site, which is kind of a big deal. Norton as a supply base was fortunate that we didn't have a lot of the heavy metal contaminations that some other military installations did, but our main issue was an underground groundwater plume. So in our case, trichloroethylene TCE, not the PCE that many of our neighbors have also been battling. They actually started on the cleanup in 1984, well in advance of even the announcement of closure. And through that process, by the end of the 1990s, we were about 98, 99% contained and clean. But until it's 100, it's not done. And so that is nearing completion. The final filings are going into the regulatory agencies. It is a process to go through the delisting because it's a national priorities list at the federal level. But we told them, based on any concerns you might have, that we would be happy to move forward with that and support them in that effort. They have to secure some funding at the federal level, so they're going to put that in for this next federal fiscal year. But it will be definitely a milestone moment for Norton to come off of the list. It's one of the few and probably first California BRACs in our round to be able to even have that status. So just figured I'd spend a moment on that. And then finally, personnel updates. I wanted Ms. Pritchett to fill you in on our recruitment efforts, which are underway. Kat, if you would.
Good afternoon. The recruitment for the Director of Finance is scheduled to close this Friday, the 13th. We, at this time, have a very strong candidate pool, and we anticipate holding interviews likely the first week of October. So it's cut and dry, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, very good. Thank you. We'll move on to the consent items. Do I hear a motion? I hear a motion from
Second.
Mayor Navarro and second from Mr. Sucho. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 7, authorize the purchase of a covered parking lot photovoltaic electric generating system at Building 48 from Venair Energy for the amount not to exceed $139,000. Mr. Burrows.
So, not that one. I need the next one. All right. So photovoltaic, solar panels outside the building of this outside of this building. When we renovated this facility, the former non-commissioned officers club, the effort was made to try to get LEED certification. And in retrofits at that time, it was a relatively new undertaking out in this area of the valley, but we thought it was a lofty goal and then we would go after it. So solar panels were critical to that. And as a result, we were able to, at that time, do a lease purchase agreement through Vanner Energy, LLC. So this is Vanner Development's separate business entity, Vanner Energy. And they were actually one of the many companies that got out there with the green energy technology and devised a pretty attractive but quite functional array and design. And so we contracted with them to design, construct, install, and operate the system. So it actually was under a lease purchase agreement that came to term last year, and we have been working hand in hand with them to formalize the transfer of the system. There were some reports and studies and warranties and guarantees to make sure everything was still functioning. And we have a couple of the fascia panels out there that they're going to come back in and clean up for us. But it is at a point to transfer. So at the time that we did this, it was just south of $1 million that they fronted. Unlike some of our other solar installations around here, the state tax credits available and the federal tax credits available to offset some of their costs on that weren't as robust as the earlier rounds, but there were still some, and they were able to take advantage of those. But the contract calls for a residual payment for transfer and ownership of the system of $139,000. That is budgeted for the IVDA in this current fiscal year. The title of the system and will transfer to IVDA. And then what we're currently engaged with, along with some of our energy agencies, such as South Coast AQMD, is working with them and or others to include in a maintenance and upkeep contract, which we bring back separately with an appropriate entity for a maintenance and installation of the actual electric vehicle charging stations. And Todd Warden with AQMD was kind enough to bring by a couple of sample mobile units, which we're happy to get working to install those as we look at more permanent installations around the airport. So that was a big help. But what we're asking for today is approval of transfer and ownership of the system, and then we'll bring those other service agreements back once the procurement's completed. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mayor.
Yes, Mike, on the energy that's provided by these solar panels, is there excess energy, and how do we handle that? Do we have storage batteries? Do we sell it?
So at the time this system was designed and installed, the regulation was that we could only produce just under 85% of the current building load here. They've changed some of that since, so that's part of the research we're doing on possible supplements to the system, which would be a separate but distinct new agreement that we'd be bringing back. So one of the things that really is exciting is you have new projects right now that are installing things such as microgrids that have those storage cells that are able to produce and even actually export energy into the system. And being that this is now 7+ years old, it's time to look at what's next, and that's what we're trying to do for you.
Okay. So my main question was, is there excess power?
Yeah, presently, no.
No. Okay, thank you.
I'd like to move to approve.
There is a motion. Let's get a second for sake of question. Okay, perfect. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm confused by some of the numbers that are on the report in the background information. It says there are 180 kilowatt capacity. You mean 180 kilowatt hours? Is that per day or is that per month or week or?
No, it's a per day output. Yeah.
Okay, and you meant kilowatt hours, I think, but,
Yeah, maybe a typo. Yeah.
yeah, okay, thank you.
The only other question I had was, once we complete the purchase, does that mean that we stop paying the 13,000?
Absolutely. Actually, the folks at Vanner were quite gracious with us because we haven't had to pay the lease payment since we started the negotiation.
Okay.
So that was
That's good.
quite nice.
That's quite a bit of savings within
Yeah.
1 year. Okay, very good.
Can I have
Go
a
ahead.
follow-up question on that, though?
Sure.
Once it's ours, then do you have something in plan that's going to take care of it, maintain it?
That's what we're procuring right now. These folks, we expect, would be a bidder in that process, but we need to procure that separately.
Okay, thank you.
Did you have another question?
These things have limited lifespan. Are we 2/3 the way through it? We
Not
expect it to start
not
when-
2/3, but there's been some degradation, which is what we're addressing in the new procurement for maintenance and possible upgrade.
Okay.
Good point.
Very good, thank you. And I think I had a motion by Mr. Sanchez and second by Mr. Sucho. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Moving on to our last item of the evening, number 8, consider and discuss and update the action plan for the Inland Valley Development Agency. Mr. Burrows.
Okay, so I'm going to go to my normal slide 2 here. And so this is where we're at in September. To help kind of go through in a little more detail, talking with Supervisor Gonzalez's team, we added a third page to this, which follows. And so on the amended ROPS element, we actually, because quite honestly, we have items in litigation, we're not in a position to do an amended ROPS during this period. So even though the trigger is there, the target's there, ALCO's team does keep track of that. There's not a need to file an amended ROPS at this point. We're in queue to get the annual ROPS filed, as we always do. As I mentioned, the SEDS document is in final draft, ready to be adopted. And then, as many of you have seen, I have been reaching out to many of you for feedback on some of your priorities and things you see are important to IVDA. And there's a couple of San Bernardino folks here that are going to get to see Kat and I hopefully pretty soon to round that out. But that's kind of where we are. Next month, we are looking at a little update on some of the existing economic development initiatives. And then October is Policies and Procedures Month for staff policy updates. And Ms. Pritchett will have a number of cleanup items on that, purchasing, accounting, a few personnel cleanups with changes in state law and such. So that's kind of where we're at and where we're headed. That concludes my report.
Very good. And that's the last item on our list. Are there any other comments from commissioners? Nice, easy, uneventful meeting. Thank you very much. We'll see you all on October the 8th. No, October the 9th. Sorry. All right.
So